Right, the next part of this tutorial is to set up some controllers to control those blend shapes, to make them just a little bit easier to keyframe and select and so on. Because at the moment we have to sort of pick this and then find the faces node and then key them from here. So we're going to set up a couple of controllers and use something called set driven key to drive them. I'm going to move some bits and pieces out of the way. Look, you can see here I've got some display layers and I've already assigned the blend shapes to that. You can actually delete them, but I wouldn't recommend doing that because if at any stage you want to adjust the rig and need to reapply those, then deleting them would mean you'd have to resculpt them all again. So not good practice. So I just hide these away on my blend shape layer. So I'm going to template them so I know they're still there, but I can pick them later on. Okay, and I'm going to create a couple of controllers for this. Now, there's lots of different kind of facial rig controller setups. This is a very basic one, but it will just get you started. I'm going to go to my curves menu. No, I'm not going to use that one. There's one I like called a Bezier curve, which doesn't create too many nodes. Whenever you use any kind of NURBS-based stuff like this, it can create lots of different nodes. So I'm going to not do it from this menu, go back to my rigging shell, and I'm going to go to create curve tools, and look, the Bezier curve tool here I think is quite good. I'm then going to hold the X key down to grid snap, and I'm just going to make a square kind of shape. I'm going to make it 6 by 6 units like that. And if you finish so it's like a U shape, press enter like this, and then in the curves menu here, if you're in modeling mode, you can then open and close that. And what's good about this, it just creates one node. If you use this one here, this square, it creates lots of nodes for each of the faces, so it's really hard to select it. It creates like a hierarchy of lines. Okay, so creating the Bezier curve from here is good. Once I've created that one, I can make a duplicate of that, so Control D, and I will move that down to here like so. And you can see that the pivot's in a totally crazy place. It always puts it at the origin. So if we go to the poly modeling shelf and just center both of those pivots with this icon here, and we can hold X again and we can just snap that to there. So we've got these two squares, and these are like the parameters of our controllers. Let's just have a look. They're both like that. Then I'm going to create a little circle for each of these, which is going to be the actual controller. So this, we can use a circle, and it's flat to the floor, so I just need to rotate it 90 degrees on the X. Just type in 90, and I'm then going to move that. I'm grid snapping it again. I'm holding X down, and I want that dead center in that square. And I'll make a duplicate, Control D, and again I'm going to grid snap that one dead center in that square. Okay, now what I want to do with all of these is just freeze transformations. So you can see this has got some translation data here, as this one has. So look, I'll pick both of those. I will delete any history of them like this and freeze their transformations. I'll do the same for the squares. There shouldn't be too much history on those, but I'll do the same so they're all nicely zeroed. Okay, so it just means that whenever this is moving about, I can reset this into this position. Okay, and so I'm going to use this as the controller for the brow movement, and this one as the controller for the mouth movement. And what we're going to do, we're going to set some limit controller so it doesn't go outside the square box. Okay, so the best way to do this, let's have a look. There's loads of different ways of doing this. I'll try and do the simplest way. I'm going to bring up the blend shape controller. So in the animation editors here, I'll bring up the shape editor like this. So it's just easier to turn the blend shapes on and off than keep selecting the head and that node. Look, we can control them with this controls here. Okay, and the other thing I want up is the set driven key control. So I need that from the rigging menu or the animation menu. It lives in, God, I can't remember where it is. I need actually the animation menu. It's under key, and here we go. Set driven key, there it is. So many menus, I sometimes forget where things are. So we need to go to the options of that. So remember, just to recap, that's in animation, key, and set driven key, and we go to the little box there and we bring this up. Okay, and this has got a driver and a driven thing. So the driver is going to be these controllers, the driven things are going to be these blend shapes. Okay, I think I will actually have to pick the blend shapes at some point, but it should be fairly straightforward. So look, I pick this and I'm going to load this as the driver. We'll do the mouth shapes first. Then I'm going to have to pick the head and pick that node there, and then load that as the driven. Okay, just picking the head mesh is not enough. You need to pick the actual node, and then we can deselect it. But we've got this. If we click on the faces, look, here are our blend shapes. Okay, so what I want the left and right movement here, the X translation that way to operate maybe the U shape, and this one for the ash shape. No, this will just be the U shape, and then up and down will be the ash shape. So let's try this out. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to key it in one position. So this is the translate X, and we're going to do the U shape like this, and we'll key that position like so. Okay, so we've got those two things selected, and we key it. We then move this over here. I can just grid snap this so it's nice and precise there, and we'll key that position, but we need to open up the U shape. Okay, so we do this. Okay, and we'll key that position. So now when we move that, we can see that that's driving that U shape. So we keyed it in its ordinate position, and we keyed it in its extreme position here. We're then going to go to this position over here. So I'm going to just hold X down, put it over here. Now I want to put a negative value in here. I don't know if I can do it in here. Let me just try. I'm going to put -1. Yep, I can do it here. That's good. And I'm going to key that position. Okay, so it's a bit extreme, but I'm just trying this out. And so now we have, look, we have some extra actual shapes here. Look, this goes right up to this position like so. So we have the wide mouth kind of cartoony shape, and then into the U shape like so. Okay. We'll then just get this back into the, I'm just grid snapping that back, that we then want the Y, which is the up down movement, and the R shape. So we'll key that in its rest position like this. We then move it down as if the mouth's open. So again, just grid snapping this down. Want the R shape like that, and we'll key that position. Then we're going to do a negative shape up here. So I'm just going to press X. And with the R, I'm going to put in -1. That's too much, so we're trying -0.7. Let me just try and type that in. So -0.7. That's better. So the lips are close together, but it's not intersecting, and we'll key that position. So let's have a look at these. So let's just type these back into position 1. Let's just see how this all works. So look, we've got UE kind of shape, and you'll get some that are a bit crazy, but you don't pose them in those positions. Okay, so like I said, this is a very simple setup, but what's nice about this is we've kind of got that control there now. Okay, we're getting extra shapes out of those two shapes, and we should be able to do, you know, basic lip sync and a few expressions from that kind of thing. Okay. We can just reset that into its 0 position because we froze its transformation. So if I 0 this like so, it goes back there. And then we're going to do a similar thing with the brow movements up here. So we'll leave this open. We're going to load this one as our driver. So load that one. We've got all these still loaded in, so we'll keep them in there. Okay. And now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to have the left and right for the worry and the angry face. So let's do angry first, like this. Okay, and so I want to translate X, so it's the left right movement, and I want angry selected here like that, and this is its rest position, so we'll key that position. We'll then move this over here. Let's snap it so it's nice and precise, and we'll turn the angry on like that, and we'll key that. So that should work for that. That's good. We'll then go back to this position. We'll turn on the worry shape like this, make sure everything's reset. So translate X still with worry, and we'll key that position. We'll then take it, I'm snapping it over here, and we'll turn the worry on like that, and we'll key that. So we should now have this. So it goes from angry to worried. Okay, and the last thing we need is the blink. So let's just snap this into the middle. We'll do that with the Y. So we want the translate Y, the up down movement, and we want that to be driving the blink. Okay, so we'll key that in this position here, doing nothing, and then we'll take it down to this position, and we'll turn the blink on. It's just a process of just remembering to make sure you got the right thing selected, and you're keying it from this little button here. Okay, so we've got that movement, and then we want to go up to this position, so I'm grid snapping that, And we're going to put in a minus value again. So let's try -1 again. -1. Let's see if I can type that in. -1. Maybe a bit too much. So we're trying -0.7 again. That's a bit better. So that's like a surprised look. So they're all set up, and we'll key that. So that should be done now. So we've got a blink, but we can also do a surprise. And then we can combine those shapes again. Look, there's some shapes that we don't want. So we won't be looking at keying it in that position. But we can get a blink out of this. We get a slightly worried kind of blink as well. But we've got a few expressions we can get out of those. Okay, so I'll just zero this again. We've now done all our kind of setting up of the set-driven key, so we can close these two windows down. The last thing we want to do is just set the limits on these. We want it so this doesn't go outside the box. Okay, so we need to load up the attribute editor now, so on the right hand side. And if we pick that square, I think if I remember rightly, if I go to the first node of that square, you'll see there's something called limit information. Okay, and this doesn't take long to do. We just got to get this all in the right position. Sorry, it's not actually for the square, it's for this. I'm doing this wrong. So you pick the circle, you go to that first node, you go to the limit information. And what I do, look, we've got translate, rotate, and scale. We don't need to worry about these ones, but look, we can quickly get those so you don't accidentally rotate. Look, the little arrows will put the values in the center into the minimum and maximum columns. So look, we can then just click this. So now we can't rotate that. We can do this one as well. Just click on these, make sure it's got all the correct values in these. And that means we can't scale it. It's fixed to that position. But finally, this is the one we want to take notice of. So let's just get those values in first of all, just zeroed everything. And then what we're going to do, we're going to do the X first. So let's go to, that's the maximum X position because that's going along the X. So here we are, X, that's the maximum. Let's put that value in there, that's 2. And then the minimum is there. Let's transfer that value, and that's done. The Z is the in-out movement, so that can just be at 0. We don't want it going forward and backwards. Now we need the height. Let's put it up high like that. That's the maximum. That's again at a value of +2, and the minimum is going to be a value of -2 on my file. So now we move that around. Like you can see, it's fixed within that. It can't move outside that box. Okay. The last one, oops, sorry, I just undid that a bit too much. Let's just move that back into the center. We'll do the same with this one. We'll load this up. We'll do the translates first. So let's do translate this way. It's the maximum that, and then over there, like so. And then the Y, the maximum is that one, and the minimum is this one. And then the Z, it needs a value of 0 into both those columns. So I've just done that, so we can't move it forward and backwards. Okay, and then we'll just do the same with these, just make sure it's 0 in each of these columns. You can see it's got numbers from before it's frozen. Okay, so this means it won't rotate. And same for the scale, just make sure it's got the current values into the minimum and maximum. And then we can lock them by ticking these boxes. Okay, that should be done. So we have a look at this now. I just maximize this view. We've got our brow controller here. We can move that about. You can see there's a little bit of paint weights being affected by those. Oh, no, that is actually in the blend shape, so that's not too bad. And then we've got this one here to do the mouth shapes. Okay, and they should all work relative to the position of this bone. So you can be animating the head moving and so on, so you can get the kind of head movement you want, and these should all work absolutely fine. Okay, you can have these controllers eventually parented to like a chess controller, so they would follow a full body rig around and so on. So you can quite quickly have it so you don't lose these and leave these behind, kind of things. The other thing I would do is I'd put these on display layers, these square boxes. So I'd put them on a display layer and just change them to R, so you can see them, but you can't pick them. They're there as a guide. Okay. The last thing we want to do is to make some eye aims for our character. At the moment, we can animate the eye bones like so, but what I want to do is create some eye aims so we can actually fix the focus of the eyes on something, or fix what the eyes are looking at. I'm going to do this just quickly. I'm going to create a couple of locators So from the create menu, I'm going to create a locator, which is just a non-renderable little crosshair kind of thing. I'm then going to snap these to the eye joints. Okay, so I'm going to hold the V key down. Okay, I'm going to drag it over here. And, whoops, let's just make sure that's snapped, because the V will snap to verts as well as pivots. So it can be a little bit fiddly. What I would be tempted to do is turn off the mesh when I'm doing that. That's good. I'm going to make a duplicate of that. So Control D. I'm going to hold the V key again, and I'm going to make that one snap to that eye there. I think that's good. So I'm going to pick both of those. Have I got both of those selected? Let's go into wireframe. Look, there it is, that green crosshair there. And I'm going to move that forward like so. So this is an aim constraint for each of the pupils. Okay. I'm then going to freeze their transformations and delete any history of them, so they're nicely zeroed, and then going to create the eye aims for each of those. So you want to pick the constraining object first, so it's this, and the object to be constrained, which is this eye. In the animation or rigging menu, you'll have a constraint menu here, and you want to go to the aim one and the options of that. And the only thing you want to change in here is to maintain offset. Normally with constraints, if you don't have this checked on, the object that's being constrained will try and align itself to the pivot of this object. Okay, so suddenly you'll find the eyeball will switch around or something, because the pivots are not necessarily aligned the same. So if you turn this off, it will just keep it in its relative position and maintain the offset. So we're going to go apply that, and do this one as well, and apply that. If I now move these around, you can see the eyes are trying to follow those. Okay, so what we do now, we then create a master shape for these, so we can parent both of those to these. So I can do individual eye animation if I wanted him to go boss-eyed or something like that, sort of cartoony. But I'm going to create a general controller, a circle controller like this. I'll just rotate around the X by 90, and I'll just move that roughly into position of these two objects. And if I get this in the front view, it should be easier to do. Just go into wireframe, and I'll just snap this, just snap that like that, and I'll scale it out a bit like this. And then I'm just going to go back to this view. If I right click on this and go Control Vertex, I can just hopefully pick those two, make almost like a sort of kind of eyeglass kind of shape, like a mask kind of shape. So it looks a little bit eye related. So something like that's quite good. Okay, last thing, freeze its transformations, delete its history as usual. And then I just need to parent both of these to this object. So I'm going to pick that locator, and then pick the main object last, and then press P. And that means we've now got this eye aim. Okay, so the eyes will follow wherever this goes, kind of thing. Okay, and you've got the locators if you want individual kind of animation on the eyes. So that's a really simple kind of head setup. Okay, so we've got the eye aims done, we've got these controllers done, so we can then start to put our character maybe into a sort of standard kind of pose ready for animation. Okay.